I knocked 3 times again on the heavy wood of the door, growing impatient, glancing behind me into the dim town. My hand checked one last time that the kitchen knife in my back pocket was in easy reach. The house was dead quiet, hushed voices beginning to panic. A hideous smile crawled across my face, teeth splitting into view as I brushed the hair out of gray eyes, smearing blood across my forehead. My finger twitched on the trigger of the gun. Alright, I'm sorry, being the only narrator here, I have to just flat out tell you that the story now switches to Max's perspective. John and Sarah and Max, the 3 friends, now we're at Max's perspective. Now you know. A heavy knock on the door startled the room into silence. Penny's hand instantly snaked to grip mine, horrified eyes staring at the door. A child whimpered in the corner, many of the girls in the room backing up in horror. One of the windows near the door suddenly shattered with a resounding gunshot. The window was boarded from the inside, meaning the attempt was completely useless, but it still wrought countless shrieks. "Max!" Penny hissed to me, dark blue irises vibrating. "We can't open it. We can't even acknowledge it's there." "I know," I stammered, quickly putting my hand on Cole's head. "We'll be okay. Don't worry." Cole's frantic brown eyes glanced up at me, wringing his shirt in his hands. He was just 8, and yet still not one of the youngest here. The thought made me sick. "Everyone, just stay calm," Mr. Johnson, Sarah's dad, spoke, getting agreeing nods from the rest of the adults in the room. A majority of us had retreated to his house when things turned bad. Most of us were in the same senior class in school, but quite a few other people from the town had joined us as well, cowering in here after the first shots began to be fired. We had also intended to help Sarah, try to reduce her fever and violent spasms, calm her insanity. But, despite our best efforts, "We don't know who it is," Mr. Johnson continued, his eyes just as tired and sunken as the rest of us, maybe even more so. "But if we just stay quiet..." "Well, you're not doing a super great job of that," a voice hissed from the other side of the door. My stomach knotted up instantly, my eyes widening in panic. I knew that voice, but no, it couldn't be him. Everyone else in the room grew even more terrified than I as his voice settled in the space like a dense sludge. There was no way he was alive. "John?" Katerina stammered out, instantly being hushed by the panicking room. Dagger eyes stabbed into her, nearly shattering her glasses as she quickly flushed dead white. Her green irises flashed to me then, making my heart drop further. "It can't be," I begged with my eyes. "Katerina, don't." "Hey, Katerina," the voice at the other end of the door giggled. "Nice to hear your voice. By the way, you wouldn't believe the kind of day I've had. Max, I know you're in there. How about you let me say hi to all of my friends?" The lights flickered, a bout of laughter hissing out from the figure standing just beyond the door. Penny's hand squeezed even tighter, suddenly erupting into outright panic. "How does he know your name?" she hushed in a whisper. "Who is John?" I just shook my head. "One of my best friends. I know you're not in our class, but surely you must have known about him. He was the one everyone falsely accused as being the serial killer." I swallowed hard. "They say He was one of the first killed. I gripped her harder, looking back to Katerina before I whispered. They found his body, Penny, in the school's nurse's office. Him and his sister, their necks were both carved out. I didn't see him, but many of the girls in our class confirmed that the body was his. So, for him to be here now... She shook lightly, backing up slightly more. They can impersonate voices, a girl stammered, one I recognized as one of Lily's friends, her brown curly hair flopping as she shook her head, covering her ears. I saw his body, a girl next to Katerina agreed softly. John is dead. Max, the voice smiled, mouth pressed to the door. They're coming for me out here. You wouldn't want your best friend to die, would you? Max, don't you think it's about time you trusted me? Don't you think you owe that to us all? My heart lurched. I know, the voice chuckled, smile widening. Don't you think I know it was you? Stop, I hissed under my breath, stomach nodding. Where did Sarah get the gun she brought to school? Max, the voice laughed hysterically. A girl like her would never willingly own a gun. Unless someone gave it to her. Made her carry it for her protection. Sudden scraping sounds began carving at the door, the voice hissing through the crack. Someone who didn't trust me. Huh? Max? You two? You and Sarah were the only ones on my side when everyone wanted me dead. I needed you. You call yourself my friend. Did you tell her to kill me? Huh? Huh, bud? Shut up! I shrieked at the door, slamming my fists down. Shut the fuck up! You're not John. I would never. She didn't even want to have it. My lungs flattened, the entire room turning to look at me. So you did give her the gun then? The voice cackled. I trusted you, dude. That hurts. A sudden loud bang at the door, the deadbolt rotating slightly off kilter as several shrieks rang out across the room. The lights again flickered black for a brief period. I don't blame you, bud, the voice soothed. Everyone's gone a bit psycho. Wouldn't you agree? Can't blame you for being cautious. Too bad you're not cautious enough, though. Your brain's gonna splatter to the floor in a few minutes here. Leave us alone! I cried, looking down to Penny cowering, her face covered with her hands. I gave her the gun just in case. She wasn't supposed to do anything with it. Leave! You can't be here! A deranged explosion of laughter split through the night air, lasting for several seconds before finally dying, John's voice picking back up, still utterly hysterical. Not if you don't let me inside, I can't. That's right, bro. A voice suddenly spoke from inside, ghastly and cold, carrying the scent of death. The figure stumbled forwards towards the door then, gangly limbs glowing a horrific, ghostly white, her hoodie likely once the same white color, if it weren't for the sheer amount of gore splattering its entirety. The two people by the door, an older man and a girl from my class, both panicked. The horrid figure suddenly let out an all too familiar bout of laughter. Gray eyes flicked up, instantly widening in ecstatic pleasure as a shrill flash of metal arced through the air. Lily's arm slashed sideways, a cleaver hacking straight through the girl's neck, leaving blood to spray against the wall with a hideous splat. The girl's head snapped like a broken doll, limbs splaying out as she went limp after several violent spasms. The man scrambled back in panic, his own face speckled with the girl's blood as Lily giggled, wrenching out the cleaver and letting the girl fall to the floor with a violent thump. "Too bad no one can keep us out." "Huh?" she cooed, slashing the deadbolt free before raising a pistol into the crowd. I gagged, scrambling back with the rest of the masses as Lily's eyes flashed with pure glee, tongue running along the length of the cleaver as her other hand tightened on the trigger, and the door opened. John sighed loudly before his face widened in a ghastly smile to match Lily's. Their eyes met. The grin carved across his face, ripping apart flesh as his irises swirled with dark gray. He had nearly as much blood on him as Lily did, and she giggled as she slipped the cleaver into her pocket, in turn grabbing his free hand as he raised a gun of his own. The lights flickered. "You move," John cooed into the crowd, interlacing his fingers with Lily's. "Together, we make you wish Lily had less of an appetite." Lily blushed, her skin flushing as she smiled softly. The sleeve of her hoodie slowly drooped. My eyes widened in horror. From her wrist, a hideously long and thin needle stabbed forth, blood dripping from where it ripped out from her skin. John just squeezed her hand harder, and her smile widened into a maniacal chasm in her ghastly face as the light suddenly went dark. For the first time in the darkness, her teeth truly revealed themselves. A collective silent shriek split through the crowd, needles peeling back the flesh of Lily's cold lips. "Tried to have John here let me in," she squirmed, the blood on her face glistening. "Ha! But you clients are so fucking suspicious of each other. I had to do it the other way around. Quite annoying when a siren has to do all the dirty work, don't you think?" The lights flickered back on, again masking Lily's ghoulish teeth. Penny was staring wide-eyed at her, utter confusion and horror arcing through her panicked face. The rest of the crowd was equally aghast, one man making a run for it further into the house, before Lily effortlessly dissolved his run to a tumble with not even a shot fired. She just lightly flicked her wrist, and the man's muscles instantly flashed into paralysis as his skull cracked against the floor. "What the hell did we say?" she hissed, pressing closer to John, grin widening. "You clients just don't fucking listen, do you? That's why you're so easy to manipulate. You really think there are those amongst you who are just sick. You think our fucking toxin is just for show." Her eyes constricted into slits, sickly bouts of laughter bubbling up from her throat. "John," she cooed, "show them what a good, sick person you are, and shoot Max's little girlfriend over there. Eh?" My eyes went wide, Penny's own form rigidifying as she instantly let go of me, taking a step back. You can't," she stammered. "Just who the hell do you think?" John fired. Penny stopped cold, limbs flashing outwards in sheer panic as her perfect skin flushed dead white. John had missed by mere inches. When I whirled back to face him, I could clearly see that this was because his hand was shaking beyond control, looking as if he was fighting to drop the weapon, his fingers tightening the more he tried to let it slip from his grasp. This would be super weird if we were actually siblings. Lily sighed, before quickly jumping up on her heels and planting a messy kiss on his lips. My stomach lurched, seeing Penny take another step back as her eyes flashed with utter confusion. Lily pulled back then, a line of saliva trailing between the two of them as she wiped at her mouth and her face flushed red. "Just kill her, you fuck," she cringed out, embarrassed. "Wait!" Penny shrieked, putting out her hands. "Lily, if you're truly a—" John fired again, this time not missing his mark by an inch as Penny's skull ruptured outwards and her body was instantly reduced to a lifeless doll, falling to the ground with a crack. I dry heaved, the crowd instantly erupting into a frenzy, so many people panicking and running that those standing still instantly became just as much of targets. Lily just smiled a hideous grin, further screams erupting from the crowd as a new figure suddenly halted their advance into the house. Her eyes were strangely dual-colored, her flashy dress swirling around her gangly form as her face grinned. From her wrists, 2 horrific needles slid forth. There was more than one. Was this really what was happening to this town? Lily slowly let her wild eyes calm, leisurely stepping aside from the front door, dragging John with her. She let the gun drop to her side, simply allowing the people rushing past to scramble out the door as she scanned their faces. I didn't know what had happened, but I didn't care. I quickly grabbed Cole, his petrified form heavier than I'd anticipated as I stumbled out the door. As I ran past John, his haunted, gray eyes followed me, ghosts screaming through his irises as he softly whispered, "Help." The door slammed closed, more gunshots echoing inside. Back to John's perspective now. I sat on the floor, my face burning red with sheer panic. Lily refused to look at me, her face even worse as she clenched her mouth tight, fists shaking as she shoved them rigidly against her sides. Halogen couldn't help but occasionally glance at us with poorly masked horror, coughing awkwardly to herself as she dragged the paralyzed man outside. Lily shakily whispered. "I'm so sorry."
"Don't apologize,"
I cried, rolling on the ground in a fetal position.
"Oh, that makes it so much worse."
"Sorry," she repeated, face puffing up, sinking to the floor where she tucked her legs into her chest.
At least it worked. I just kissed my sister,"
I shrieked, rolling across the blood-soaked carpet.
"Nothing about..."
I curled up tighter.
"Your overreacting is what's making it so bad,"
she hissed, face going even redder despite her words.
You weren't supposed to miss. It made sense. I'm not a marksman,"
I whined, rolling onto my back.
"She was standing kind of far away. I was having second thoughts. Of course I missed. We could have just let her go."
"That wouldn't have proved the point as effectively," she stammered. "You know as well as I do that actually worked out perfectly."
"What is your definition of perfect?"
I cried, before finally slumping upward to sit hunched and taking a deep breath. "But you're right. For what it was, that worked out better than we could have hoped. Still, that was fucking horrifying. Jesus Christ, never again." "The kiss, or?" Lily stammered, fiddling with the needle in her wrist, wincing slightly.
"Both!" I cried. "Everything! You can't tell me you don't feel sick after all that."
"I do," she stammered, gasping again as she pulled at the needle. "But
We did it for each other, for everyone we care about.
Hopefully, I sighed, slowly crawling over to her on weak limbs and softly reaching for her arm. She winced away, gritting her teeth before slowly breathing and offering her wrists to me. On 3, I nodded gently, carefully grabbing the needle with my thumb and pointer finger.
Don't give a countdown!
She squealed, flinching away.
Just freaking do!
I wrenched backwards, cutting her off mid-sentence as she gasped in agony. The needle slid from her wrist, my hand quickly moving to cover the wound as I wrapped it in loose cloth. Her teeth gritted, her eyes flicking away as she tried to breathe steadily. I pulled the wrapping extremely tight, doing my best to restrict blood flow.
Jesus!
She gasped, slapping my head.
That's tight enough!
She spit several crystalline needle teeth onto the ground.
All right.
I flinched back, sighing and standing up slowly, offering my hand to her. She spat out several more teeth, groaning.
These fucking things cut my mouth to ribbons. How the actual hell does Halogen talk? Or do anything?
I'm sure she's used to it. I shrugged, hoisting her up to her feet where she dusted herself and furrowed her brow.
Or she just doesn't have to fucking grave rob a siren and jab body parts into herself to pretend to be one, Lily hissed. That's the dumbest idea ever. I understand it's necessary to let the townspeople know that there are sirens in the town, make ourselves out to be the bad guys, to not only fuel but direct their hysteria in the proper direction, away from each other and towards the sirens. Hell, I even understand the whole entry procedure. You shooting the window in the beginning, covering up Halogen and I breaking into the back of the house at the same time, you distracting them with accusations while I collected and pushed their weapons out of view. But why the actual hell did I need to be here?
I looked at her curiously.
Halogen could have done all of that. She frowned. And she's actually a siren. There wouldn't have been a need to dress her up so fancy.
Well, I smirked. We needed Halogen to point out which of those in the room were sirens because she can tell faster than we can, but I know what you're fishing for. I chuckled, putting my hand on her head, causing her face to go red, her teeth to gnash. I know you too well, but you don't have to force me to say it. I'll tell you because it's true. Her eyes darted to the ground. Halogen was convinced that together we would become dangerous. I grinned. That we wouldn't be able to fight off our paranoia brought on by the catalyst, especially if we were feeding off each other. I stretched, taking a big breath.
She might be right in that,
I grinned, meeting Lily's eyes.
But dangerous is kinda what we need right now. If it means slaughtering a town full of manipulative creatures trying to wipe us out.
I smiled softly.
You better bet I wasn't going to do it without you. I don't know if the plan needed you, but I needed you. I need you. The moment I stopped trusting you is the moment everything fell apart. My eyes drifted to the ground. The reason I first became so interested in the killer, I breathed softly, was because Halogen used your voice when talking to Marcus. Her eyes widened. I thought for the longest time it was you. I cringed, feeling my teeth pressing against each other. I have no right to have your trust when I was so careless. Hey, she laughed. Every damn person in our town was convinced it was you. Even that being said, me suspecting you wasn't pure pressure. You seemed guilty as fuck, dude. I won't back down on that.
You had your reasons too, I'm sure of it, but that's a mistake we won't make again. If we think something is off, we tell each other. No secrets, no... Well, I guess that about sums it up. No secrets. Easier said than done, I laughed, but yeah, I agree. Clients with guns. Halogen scrambled inside, slamming the door. We've stayed here too long. I glanced at Penny and the girl Lily had practically decapitated, grinning. Well, at least they'll find 2 siren bodies when they arrive, huh? The needles faintly protruded from Penny's sleeves, her skin decaying into horrible gray as Halogen slashed off the light, scrambling up the stairs and gesturing us forward. Please make your intervals shorter, Halogen stammered, dual eyes flashing. This is merely part 1 of the plan. Inciting hysteria and mob mentality towards the sirens will only get us so far. The rumors will spread like wildfire, and knowing that my kind contains needles in their wrists will allow clients to easily identify and kill us, but the 3 of us are now more wanted than ever before, by clients and sirens alike. Now begins the difficult part. I quickly nodded, feeling Lily's hand grasping mine as we started up the stairs, hearing shouting voices behind us. Suddenly, however, Lily pulled me back, forcing me to move slower as she looked at me, fear in her eyes as she quickly whispered, John, speaking of not keeping secrets and telling each other when we think something may be off. I nodded rapidly, staring at her. I lied, she whispered, face going red as her eyes glanced at our running shoes. I do not feel remorse for the man whose hand I cut off, nor the classmate of yours I just decapitated. I nodded softly, sighing as I spoke out carefully. One of them was trying to kill us, and the other was a siren. I think it may be difficult to think about gray areas in a situation like this. John, she hissed, I'm afraid. Afraid you do not understand. Afraid this may continue. Sirens are people too, are they not? Halogen certainly seems to have feelings, and those we just killed are your classmates, regardless of what they've done or what they are. What we just did, holding those people hostage, the majority of them innocent, making them so afraid and killing some of them in cold blood. My eyes twitched slightly, already knowing what she was going to say next. That was fun, she whispered. That was so much fun, John. I truly wish we could do it again. I want to hold someone's life in my hands and slowly squeeze down until they snap. I didn't feel like I was acting back there when I laughed and smiled. This is wrong, isn't it? Speaking of not hiding things from each other, I cringed. When I asked if you felt sick after doing all of that, it was because I was worried I was the only one who didn't. Her eyes grew even more worried. I'm afraid of what this catalyst is doing to us, I affirmed. We can only hope the sirens lose this battle before we lose ourselves. God dang it, Liam. Me and my fucking cliffhangers. So clearly this is going to have a second season, so get excited for that. Thank you everyone so much for sticking through this entire story. Some things I think worked, some things didn't work quite so well.
and I will go back and revisit those in the text version, and then hopefully at some point I can do something more with this story in the future. Once again, thank you so much, you guys, for sticking through this with me. I had a ton of fun writing this one, and I hope you had a good time listening. So, until next time.